A divorced woman showed kindness to a stranger on a cold, lonely night. But she never expected that one small act would make her fall for a man who could change her life forever. Sarah Mitchell, a woman still carrying the quiet scars of a painful divorce, had learned the hard way that love often comes with betrayal. But when she stopped to help a wounded, mysterious man with nothing but her last bit of hope, something in his eyes felt dangerously different. He wasn't just grateful. He was hiding something. And as her kindness slowly pulled her closer to him, Sarah began to feel something she thought she had buried forever. Love. But who was this man she was falling for? Why did he seem both broken and powerful at the same time? And what would happen when she finally discovered the truth about the man she never expected to love? Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. It gives me the strength and encouragement to keep writing beautiful stories. Sarah Mitchell had promised herself one thing the day she signed those divorce papers. Never again. Never again would she trust so easily. Never again would she give her heart to someone who could walk away from it like it meant nothing. The memory still lived inside her like a shadow she couldn't outrun. Standing in that courtroom, watching her ex-husband Ryan Mitchell avoid her eyes, as if the 5 years they spent together meant less than the ink on the paper between them. The lies, the late nights, the whispered phone calls he thought she never noticed. It all came crashing down in one brutal moment. "It's not working anymore, Sarah," he had said flatly. Not working. As if love was a machine you could just switch off. Now, months later, Sarah found herself walking alone under the dim glow of streetlights, her heels tapping softly against the pavement. The city had long gone quiet, wrapped in the stillness of the night. Her small apartment waited for her just a few blocks ahead, but something in her chest felt heavier than usual. Loneliness had a way of creeping in when she least expected it. She adjusted her coat tighter around her body as the wind brushed past her skin. It had been a long day at the bookstore where she worked. Long, but safe. Predictable. Quiet. Exactly the kind of life she had forced herself into after everything fell apart. No risks, no attachments, just peace. Or at least something close to it. As she turned a corner into a narrower street, something caught her attention. A faint sound, almost like a groan. Sarah slowed down, her heart picking up slightly. She glanced around, her instincts immediately telling her to keep walking. Don't get involved. That was the rule she had learned, but then she heard it again. A soft, pained sound. Her steps hesitated. For a brief moment she stood there, caught between fear and something deeper. Something she couldn't quite silence. Kindness had always been her weakness. Even after everything, it was the one part of her that refused to harden. "Hello?" she called out carefully. No answer, just silence. And then another faint groan. Sarah's eyes scanned the dimly lit alley to her right. Her breath caught slightly as she noticed a figure slumped against the wall, partially hidden in the shadows. Her first instinct was to walk away, and this was how trouble started. But her feet didn't move. Instead, she found herself stepping closer. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked, her voice softer now. As she approached, the figure shifted slightly, revealing a man, his clothes worn, his face shadowed. But there was something striking about him even in that state. His arm was pressed tightly against his side, and even in the low light, she could see the dark stain spreading across his shirt. Blood. Sarah's heart pounded. "Oh my God!" The man slowly lifted his head, his eyes meeting hers, and for a second, everything else faded. There was something in his gaze, something intense. Not just pain, but awareness, sharp, calculating, and yet strangely vulnerable. "I'm fine," he muttered weakly. She almost laughed at that. "You're bleeding," she said, kneeling beside him despite the alarm bells ringing in her mind. "I've had worse," he replied, his lips curving slightly as if he was trying to make light of it. Sarah shook her head, already pulling off her scarf. "That's not how this works. You don't just sit here and... What? Bleed out quietly?" He watched her closely as she gently pressed the fabric against his wound. His jaw tightened slightly, but he didn't stop her. "You shouldn't be here," he said after a moment, his voice lower now. "Neither should you," she shot back. For a brief second, silence stretched between them. Then something unexpected happened. He smiled. Not fully, just enough to reveal a glimpse of something softer beneath the pain. "Fair point." Sarah swallowed, suddenly aware of how close she was to him, of how easily she had ignored every rule she set for herself. This wasn't safe. Nothing about this made sense. And yet, she couldn't leave him. "What's your name?" she asked quietly. There was a pause, as if he was considering whether to answer. "Ethan," he finally said. Sarah nodded. "I'm Sarah." Another silence, but this one felt different, less tense, almost connected. She helped him slowly to his feet, his weight leaning heavily against her. He was stronger than he looked, but injured enough to need her. And for reasons she couldn't explain, that mattered to her. "I can't just leave you here," she said. "You need help." Ethan looked at her, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. "You always help strangers like this?" he asked. Sarah hesitated. "No," she admitted softly. Just the ones who need it." He studied her for a long moment, as if trying to understand her, or maybe as if he already did. "Then I guess I'm lucky," he said. But something in his tone suggested otherwise. As they began walking slowly toward her apartment, Sarah felt it, that unfamiliar pull in her chest. Something she hadn't felt in a long time. Something dangerous, because this wasn't just kindness anymore. And deep down, she knew it. She just didn't know who Ethan really was, or why helping him felt like the beginning of something she might not be able to walk away from. Would this simple act of kindness heal her broken heart, or break it even more? And who was the man she had just let into her life? By chance, or by fate? Sarah barely remembered how they made it up the stairs. Ethan's weight leaned heavier against her with every step, his arm draped over her shoulders as she struggled to keep him steady. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor, something she had never complained about before. But tonight, every step felt like a test of strength she didn't know she had. "Almost there," she whispered, more to herself than to him. Ethan let out a low breath, his grip tightening slightly. "You always... this stubborn..." Sarah huffed softly, "Only when someone's life depends on it." A faint smirk tugged at his lips, but it faded quickly, replaced by a flash of pain that made her heart twist. Finally, they reached her door. Her hands trembled slightly as she fumbled for her keys, the metallic clink echoing in the quiet hallway. For a brief second, doubt crept in again. "What are you doing, Sarah?" This was a stranger, a wounded stranger, in her home. But when she glanced at Ethan, his face pale, his breathing uneven, that doubt didn't stand a chance. The door swung open. "Come on," she urged gently. Getting him inside was harder than she expected. He stumbled slightly, and she tightened her grip, guiding him toward the couch. The moment he sat down, his body seemed to give in, his head falling back as he exhaled deeply. Sarah quickly shut the door behind them, her heart still racing. For a second, she just stood there, taking it all in. This wasn't her life. This wasn't part of her plan. And yet, here he was. "You're going to need stitches," she said, moving closer, trying to keep her voice steady. Ethan let out a quiet chuckle. "You a doctor too?" "No," she replied, kneeling in front of him. "But I know when someone's bleeding too much." She disappeared into the bathroom and returned with a small first aid kit, her movements quick but careful. As she knelt beside him again, she hesitated for just a moment. "Okay, this might hurt." Ethan's eyes met hers, something intense flickering in them again. "I've had worse," he repeated, but this time his voice was softer, almost reassuring. Sarah gently lifted his shirt just enough to see the wound clearly. Her breath caught. It was deeper than she expected. "Ethan," she whispered. "I said I've had worse," he insisted, though the tension in his jaw betrayed him. She swallowed, forcing herself to focus. Her hands were steady, but inside everything felt anything but. As she cleaned the wound, Ethan's body tensed. His fingers curled slightly against the couch, but he didn't make a sound. "You can say something, you know," Sarah muttered. "You don't have to act tough." A faint smirk appeared again. "Who says I'm acting?" She rolled her eyes lightly, but a small smile slipped through despite herself. It surprised her. How easy this felt. Too easy. "You should go to a hospital," she said after a moment. "No." The answer came quickly, firm. Sarah paused, looking up at him. "No? No hospitals?" There was something in his tone that made her stop pushing. Not anger, not fear. Something deeper. Something final. "Why?" she asked quietly. Ethan held her gaze for a long moment, then looked away. "Let's just say it would complicate things." That didn't make her feel better. If anything, it made everything worse. But still, she didn't argue. Instead, she finished dressing the wound, her movements gentler now. "There," she said softly. "It's not perfect, but it'll hold for now." Ethan looked down briefly, then back at her. "You're good at this." Sarah let out a small breath. "I had practice." He raised an eyebrow slightly, and just like that, a memory pulled her back. Late nights, arguments, silence that felt louder than screams. Her ex-husband coming home drunk once, cut on his arm from something he refused to explain. She had cleaned that wound too, back when she still believed caring would fix everything. It didn't end well, she added quietly. Ethan didn't respond right away, but his gaze softened. "I'm sorry," he said. The words were simple, but they felt different, real. Sarah looked at him, studying his face, trying to understand the man sitting in her living room. "You don't talk like someone who's used to being helpless," she said slowly. Ethan let out a quiet breath. "And you don't act like someone who's afraid of strangers." "Maybe I should be." "Maybe," he agreed. Silence settled between them again, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was charged. "You can stay here tonight," Sarah said suddenly, the words surprising even her. "At least until you're strong enough to leave." Ethan's eyes searched hers. "You trust me that much?" She hesitated. "No," she said honestly, "but I trust myself enough to handle it." That earned a quiet chuckle from him. "Fair enough." She stood up, grabbing a blanket and placing it beside him. You take the couch. I'll be in the bedroom. Ethan nodded, but as she turned to walk away, Sarah. She paused. There was something in the way he said her name, uncareful, intentional. She turned back. Why did you really help me? He asked. Not curious, not casual, serious. The question lingered in the air, heavier than anything else that had been said that night. Sarah held his gaze, her heart tightening slightly. I told you, she said softly. You needed it. Ethan shook his head slightly. That's not the whole truth. He was right, and she knew it. Her chest rose slowly as she searched for the answer she had been avoiding. Because, she started, then stopped. Because leaving him there would have made her feel like the person she was trying not to become. Cold, detached, broken. Because I didn't want to walk away again, she finally admitted. Ethan's expression shifted, something understanding, something familiar, as if her words meant more to him than she realized. You won't regret it, he said quietly. But something about that promise didn't feel simple. It felt loaded, like a warning wrapped in reassurance. Sarah nodded slowly, though uncertainty lingered in her chest. Get some rest, she said, turning away again. This time she didn't stop. She closed her bedroom door behind her, leaning against it as she let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. What had she just done? Letting a stranger into her home, trusting someone she knew nothing about, feeling something she wasn't ready for. Her mind raced, but one thought stayed louder than the rest. Ethan. There was more to him. She could feel it. The way he spoke, the way he carried himself, the way he avoided certain questions. This wasn't just a random man she found in an alley, and deep down, she knew her life had just changed. But out in the living room, Ethan wasn't sleeping. His eyes were open, fixed on the ceiling, his expression no longer soft or vulnerable. It was sharp, focused, different. Slowly, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a phone. Sleek, expensive, completely out of place with everything else about him. He stared at it for a moment, then turned it off. Completely. As if disappearing was the only option he had left. His jaw tightened slightly. Not yet, he muttered under his breath. But the question lingered in the silence of Sarah's apartment. Who was Ethan really? And what kind of danger had Sarah just invited into her life? Simply because a divorced woman chose kindness and began to fall for a man she never expected. Morning came quietly, but not peacefully. Sarah woke to the unfamiliar sound of movement outside her bedroom, her eyes snapping open as confusion settled in before memory caught up. Ethan. For a brief second, she lay still, staring at the ceiling, her heart beating just a little faster than usual. He's still here. That alone should have scared her more than it did. Instead, something else crept in. Curiosity. She sat up slowly, running a hand through her hair, her mind already racing with questions she didn't have answers to. Who was he really? Why didn't he want a hospital? And why, out of all people, did she feel safe around him? Safe. The thought didn't make sense, and yet it stayed. Carefully, she stepped out of bed and walked toward the door, opening it just enough to peek into the living room. Ethan was standing. Not just standing, moving. Slowly, yes, and with visible strain, but far more steady than he should have been after the condition she found him in. He had one hand braced against the table, the other adjusting the bandage she had wrapped around his side. Sarah frowned slightly. That was fast. Ethan turned at the sound of her voice, his expression shifting for a split second before settling into something calm. "Good morning," he said. Like nothing was unusual, like he hadn't been half-conscious just hours ago. Sarah crossed her arms lightly, studying him. "You're not supposed to be up. And you're not supposed to take in injured strangers," he replied smoothly. She narrowed her eyes slightly. Touché. But something about him felt off, not in a dangerous way, in a hidden way. "You heal pretty quickly," she said, stepping closer. "Most people wouldn't even be able to stand." Ethan shrugged slightly, though the movement clearly cost him. "I'm not most people." That much was obvious. Sarah exhaled slowly, trying to ignore the growing feeling in her chest, the one that told her she was standing too close to something she didn't understand. "Sit down before you make it worse," she said, gesturing toward the couch. For a moment, it looked like he might argue. Then he didn't. He sat. And somehow, that small act of listening made something soften inside her. "I'll make coffee," she added, turning toward the kitchen. "Black," he said. She paused mid-step, glancing back at him. "You're very specific for someone who refuses hospitals." A faint smile touched his lips. Some habits stick. Sarah shook her head slightly but didn't press further. Not yet. As she moved around the kitchen, the quiet between them stretched again. But it wasn't empty. It was filled with unspoken questions, quiet observations, and something else neither of them was ready to name. "You live alone?" Ethan asked after a moment. "Yes." "No one checks in on you?" The question caught her off guard. She turned slightly, leaning against the counter. "Why does that matter?" He held her gaze. "It doesn't. Just asking." But it did matter. She could tell. "Not anymore," she said finally. "I used to have someone." Ethan didn't interrupt, didn't fill the silence, just waited. And for some reason, that made it easier. "We were married," she added, "for 5 years." His expression didn't change, but his attention sharpened. "What happened?" Sarah let out a quiet breath, looking down at her hands. "He stopped choosing me," she said simply, "and I kept pretending not to notice, until I couldn't anymore." Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. That sounds like his loss. The words were direct, certain, and they hit something deep. Sarah let out a small, almost disbelieving laugh. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," he said. Their eyes met again, and for a second, everything else faded. That pull returned. Stronger this time. Dangerous. She looked away first. "Coffee's ready," she muttered, handing him a cup. Their fingers brushed for just a moment, but it lingered. Far longer than it should have. "Thank you," he said quietly. Sarah nodded, but her heart wasn't steady anymore. She moved to sit across from him, creating distance that didn't feel like enough. "You never told me what happened to you," she said after a moment. Ethan took a slow sip of his coffee. "Wrong place," he replied. "Wrong time." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I can give." Her frustration flickered, but so did something else. Understanding. Because she had her own things she didn't talk about. Still. "You're hiding something," she said. Ethan didn't deny it. "That doesn't mean I'm dangerous," he said instead. Sarah held his gaze, searching for something. Anything that would tell her what she needed to know. "And if you are?" she asked softly. A pause, then, "You would have seen it already." The certainty in his voice sent a quiet chill through her. Not fear, something else. Something deeper. Before she could respond, a sudden sound cut through the moment. A knock. Sharp. Unexpected. Both of them froze. Sarah's heart skipped. "Are you expecting someone?" Ethan was already on his feet. Too fast. Too alert. No. Everything about him changed in an instant. The softness was gone, replaced by something controlled, calculated, dangerously aware. Another knock. Louder this time. "Sarah?" A familiar voice called from the other side. Her breath caught. Ryan, her ex-husband. Ethan's eyes snapped to hers. "Who is that?" he asked quietly. Sarah swallowed, her mind racing. "My ex." Ethan's expression darkened slightly. Not with jealousy, but with something more strategic. "Does he come here often?" "No," she said quickly. "Not like this." The knock came again, impatient now. "Sarah, I know you're in there." Panic flickered in her chest. Why now? Why today? She looked back at Ethan, and for the first time, uncertainty hit her hard. This wasn't just complicated anymore. This was a collision, past and present, truth and secrets. "Go in the bedroom," she whispered urgently. Ethan didn't move. "I don't hide," he said. "This isn't about you," she shot back, her voice low but firm. "Please." Something in her tone made him pause. Then, reluctantly, he stepped back, but not before saying, "Be careful." Her heart tightened. Then she turned and walked toward the door, each step heavier than the last. As she reached for the handle, her mind raced with questions she didn't have time to answer. What did Ryan want? What was Ethan about to get pulled into? And why did it feel like everything was about to change? All over again. She opened the door, and there he stood. Ryan Mitchell. The man who broke her. The man who walked away. But the look in his eyes now wasn't the same. "I need to talk to you," he said. Behind her, inside her apartment, a man with secrets watched and waited, and Sarah stood between two worlds she wasn't ready to face. Would her past pull her back into the pain she escaped? Or would the man she never expected finally reveal the truth that could change everything? Sarah's fingers tightened slightly around the edge of the door as she faced Ryan. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them felt heavy, thick with everything that had been left unsaid, everything that had broken them apart. "I need to talk to you," Ryan repeated, his voice softer now, almost uncertain. That alone was new. Ryan had never been uncertain. Sarah studied his face carefully, and the same sharp features, the same familiar presence, but something was different. The confidence he once carried so effortlessly was cracked. "What do you want?" she asked, her tone controlled but distant. Ryan exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Can I come in?" Her instinct was immediate. No. But before she could say it, her mind flickered to the man inside, to Ethan. Everything about this situation was already fragile. Letting Ryan in would only make it worse. "I don't think that's a good idea," she said firmly. Ryan's jaw tightened slightly. "Sarah, please. This isn't what you think." A bitter edge touched her lips. "That's funny. You don't even know what I think." He hesitated, and in that hesitation, she saw it. Regret. "I messed up," he admitted quietly. "I know that now." The words landed, but they didn't settle. Not like they used to. Sarah crossed her arms, creating a barrier that felt long overdue. "You knew it then too. You just didn't care." "That's not true." "Then what is?" she shot back, her voice rising despite herself. "Because from where I stood, You made it very clear I wasn't enough. Ryan stepped closer, his expression tightening. You were always enough. Don't, she said sharply. Don't rewrite what happened just because you're standing here now. Silence fell again, but this time it wasn't just heavy, it was breaking. I lost everything, Ryan said finally, his voice lower. The job, the house, everything. Sarah blinked, caught off guard. What? He gave a hollow laugh. Turns out the things I chose over you weren't as solid as I thought. A pause. Then, and now you're here, she said slowly. Why? Ryan met her eyes. Because I realized too late that you were the only real thing I had. The words should have meant something. Once they would have meant everything. But now, they felt like echoes from a life she no longer lived. Before she could respond, Sarah. Ethan's voice. Low, steady, behind her. Ryan's eyes flicked past her instantly, his expression shifting in confusion, then suspicion. Who's that? He asked. Sarah's heart skipped. This was it. The moment everything collided. She turned slightly as Ethan stepped into view. Calm, composed, but no longer hiding. This is Ethan, she said, her voice quieter now but firm. He's staying here for a bit. Ryan's gaze sharpened as he looked Ethan up and down, taking in everything. The posture, the presence, the quiet confidence. This your new boyfriend? Ryan asked, a bitter edge creeping in. Sarah frowned. That's none of your business. Ethan didn't react immediately. He just watched, observed. Then, slowly, he stepped closer. Just enough to stand beside Sarah, not in front of her, not behind her, but with her. No, Ethan said calmly. But I am someone who doesn't walk away when it matters. The words landed hard. Ryan's expression darkened. You don't know anything about us. You're right, Ethan replied. I don't. A pause. Then his voice lowered slightly. But I know what it looks like when someone realizes too late what they had. Sarah felt her breath catch. Ryan scoffed lightly, though it didn't carry the same confidence. And what? You're the better option? Ethan didn't flinch. I'm the present, he said simply. Silence, sharp, unavoidable. Ryan looked between them, something unsettled flickering in his eyes. Then he turned back to Sarah. You're really going to do this? He asked. After everything we had? Sarah's chest tightened, but this time it didn't break her. It clarified her. What we had ended the moment you stopped choosing me, she said quietly. You don't get to come back now and expect it to still be there. Ryan's expression faltered. For the first time, he had no response. But then his eyes shifted again, narrowing slightly as he looked at Ethan more carefully. And something clicked. You, Ryan said slowly. You look familiar. Sarah's stomach dropped. Ethan's expression didn't change, but something in the air did. Do I? Ethan replied evenly. Ryan stepped closer, squinting slightly. Sure, yeah. I've seen you before. Somewhere. Ryan, Sarah interrupted, her voice firmer now. It doesn't matter. But it did. She could feel it, the tension, the shift. Ryan hesitated, then shook his head slightly, as if brushing the thought away. Forget it, he muttered. But his eyes lingered. Then, finally, he looked back at Sarah. I meant what I said, he added quietly. About you, about us. Sarah nodded slowly. I know, she said. And she did. That was the difference. She understood him now. But she wasn't tied to him anymore. Ryan let out a long breath, then stepped back. Take care of yourself, he said. And just like that, he turned and walked away. No fight, no closure. Just gone. Sarah stood there for a moment, staring at the empty space he left behind. Then she closed the door. Softly, firmly, and this time, it felt final. Silence filled the apartment again, but it wasn't the same silence. It felt lighter. Sarah turned slowly. Ethan was watching her, not with intensity, not with calculation, but with something softer. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "Yeah," she said. I finally am." A small pause, then her expression shifted, curiosity rising again. "Now," she added, stepping closer, "I think it's time you tell me the truth." Ethan held her gaze. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, "You're right," he said quietly. He reached into his jacket again, pulling out the same sleek phone from the night before. But this time, he turned it on. The screen lit up instantly, and within seconds, it started buzzing. Notifications, calls, messages, dozens. Sarah's brows furrowed. That doesn't look like someone who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Ethan exhaled slowly, then looked at her. "The truth is," he began, his voice steady now, "I wasn't supposed to be anywhere near that alley." Sarah's heart began to race again. "Then why were you?" A pause. Then, "Because someone was trying to make sure I didn't make it out of there." Her breath caught. "What?" Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. "I own a company," he continued. "A big one, and not everyone is happy about the decisions I've been making." Sarah stared at him. The pieces, they didn't just fit, they snapped into place. The confidence, the control, the secrecy. "You're serious," she whispered. Ethan nodded. "I didn't tell you because the less you knew, the safer you were." A hollow laugh escaped her. "I took you into my home." "I know," he said softly, "and that's exactly why I didn't want to put you in danger." But it was too late for that. They both knew it. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "Out of all the people, why did this happen to me?" Ethan stepped closer. Not too close. Just enough. "Because you chose kindness," he said, "when you had every reason not to." Her chest tightened, those same words from the beginning, but now, they meant everything. "And what happens now?" she asked. Another pause. This one heavier. "Now," Ethan said slowly, "you decide if you want me to stay, or if you want me to disappear and keep your life safe." Sarah looked at him. Really looked at him. The man she helped. The man she didn't expect. The man she was already starting to. She stopped the thought. But it was there. Clear. Just strong. Unavoidable. "You don't get to make that decision for me," she said softly. Ethan's expression shifted slightly. "Then what do you want?" he asked. Sarah took a breath. A real one. The kind she hadn't taken in a long time. "I want the truth," she said. "No more hiding, no more half answers." Ethan nodded. "You'll have it." And she hesitated slightly, then continued. "I want to know if this," she gestured between them, "is real, or just another situation I'll regret." Ethan didn't answer right away, but when he did, his voice was certain. "It's real." Silence settled again, but this time, it wasn't heavy. It was full of possibility, of risk, of something new. Sarah let out a small breath, a faint smile touching her lips. "A divorced woman showed kindness," she murmured, almost to herself. Young Ethan tilted his head slightly. "And?" She met his eyes, and fell for a man she never expected. A pause. Then, "Let's just hope she doesn't regret it," she added quietly. Ethan's gaze softened. "She won't," he said. But the future was still unwritten, and as they stood there on the edge of something neither of them had planned, one truth remained clear. Sometimes the most unexpected love begins with a single act of kindness. But what comes after is a story only fate can finish. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. It gives me the strength and encouragement to keep writing beautiful stories. Thank you.